Hello and welcome to another short drawing lesson. This week I've got 10 useful tips for you which are good for drawing accurate pictures of things that are in front of you. It doesn't have to be cars, it could be anything. Number one is draw as lightly as possible at the start. There's a good chance that your first lines will be just construction lines or lines that you need to tweak slightly and change. So do those as lightly as you can, and then later as you get more confident and you're happy with what you've done, do all the shading and the details and all the fun stuff. Number two is to simplify. As I said, cars are complicated things, and so the best thing you can do is try and reduce them down to this sort of bare essentials at the beginning anyway. So this little lost in, for example, could be reduced down to a simple box that tapers at one end, sat on 4 circles. And if you can get that down correctly, then everything else should hopefully just slot into place. That's the plan. Number 3 is getting onto perspective. It's a good idea. You definitely really want to know some perspective rules. It's not as complicated as you might think. The most important thing about perspective is to think about your eye line. This is an imaginary line that's level with your eyes, and that's where all the vanishing points will sit if the object is on a level surface. And we can see in this picture, because it's side on, there is a vanishing point within the photo right here, and we can use that to give us the right angle for all of these parallel lines, like the front of the roof, the axles, and the edges of the tyres. We can even work out the size of the wheels on the far side. All useful stuff. A lot of the time you'll find that your vanishing points aren't on the page, as in this one, but you can still work out, get a good idea of where they are by using clues from your picture, anything that's parallel like the windscreen and things, to give you a guide as to where they're heading off to. So these are all heading off to one single point, all of these green lines, a vanishing point that's sat on this yellow eye line. And we can work out the same for the lines that go off to the other vanishing point far off on the right. See, I'm just using things that we know are the same height, like the centres of the wheels, the contact point of the wheels, drawing a line through them till they hit the eye line. That's where your vanishing points are. Next, we've got number 5, measuring. You'll have seen artists holding their pencils out at arm's length and sliding their finger up and down. What they're doing is measuring, so lining up the top of their pencil with, say, the top of the front wheel, sliding a thumb down till it reaches the bottom, and now you can keep your thumb there and compare it to other things in the picture. So let's have a look what we can ascertain with this front wheel height measurement. We can move that down the back here, and you can see that the height of the van at the back is exactly the same as the height of the front wheel. That's a useful measurement. We can do the same with the width of the front wheel. It's green line. If we move it across one, we can see the right hand edge of the drawing is almost one wheel's width across to the right. And we can do the same to this side. There's 1, 2 wheels and a tiny little bit. So we know if once we've got this line in and a line there, a bounding box, we know exactly where the car needs to fit in. We can't go too long or too short. So that's really useful stuff to know. Number 6 is think about angles. So when it comes to angles, we're good at judging verticals and we're good at judging horizontals. There's a nice one there, our eye line level with the bottom of the windows. But we're less good at judging slopes. So one thing you can do, like the slope of this windscreen, we could just guess it, but you'll often get it wrong. You could imagine a vertical next to it, and now we just have to think of this cheese shape. Is it that kind of angle, or is it more like this kind of angle, or that angle? Check on your drawing what kind of angle you ended up with. Hopefully you'll end up with this one if you put the vertical in first. It just makes it a bit easier to guess how much of a slope that is. Number 7 is all about alignment. So when you can use your pencil again for this. When you're looking at a subject, you can use your pencil and line it up with things like the front windscreen, for instance, and use it to extend the angles and lines to see what else they intersect with. So this windscreen line extends and reaches to a point here on the bottom, a bit further back than the front wheel arch. So if yours is coming out here, you've got a problem. It might be too slopey or too far forwards. This bottom line of the car runs really nicely through the centre of the front wheel, and the roof stops exactly in a line with the centre of the back wheel. It's almost as if the designer intended it. You can also draw imaginary lines, like this one here that goes from the front edge of the wheel to the radiator, and you can see it's got a slope on it. So if yours is coming out vertical or too slopey, you can see why and what the problem might be. Number 8 is quite a complex one. It's called drawing through, and I did a whole episode on this last week. But the basic idea is, don't just think about the bits you can see, think about all the stuff you can't see as well. So try to think of your subject as a three-dimensional volume that's all assembled in a certain way and has to sit together in the right way, rather than just the front faces that you can see as a flat two-dimensional object. So here, although I can't see that wheel in the finished sketch, it's really useful to know where those four wheels are right at the beginning of the drawing, so that everything else sits in the right place on top of it. Number 9 is negative space. This is a slightly unusual one. I don't use it very often, but it can be useful when you're coming to something very complex like an engine, where you easily get sidetracked by the detail and end up with something with the wrong proportions. So by thinking about the negative shapes, you can use those to kind of constrain yourself and stop you going too far afield. So whereas I might not actually draw this in incredible detail, this empty space, just knowing the rough shape of it will constrain me to drawing the engine in this area, because I know that this is like a no-go area. You can also invent shapes, negative shapes, just to see, a bit like with the angles, what kind of triangle you end up here with for this slope. So if you invent this negative shape here using the chassis and this structure here and a vertical, if yours is coming out more like this, then you know something's not quite right and you can fix it. Same down here. So it's more just, it's a good thing for just checking where things might have gone awry. That's often where I use it. And last of all, we've got number 10, which is to flip your picture. So sometimes you can just look at your sketch and know that something's not quite right with it, but not know what. And by flipping your picture, like as if with a mirror, you could use a physical mirror if you're doing a physical sketch. Sometimes that will often highlight the bit that's not quite right. This isn't always possible if you're drawing on paper and you haven't got a mirror with you. So one way that can sometimes help is to turn your picture upside down. And again, just looking at it in a new light can sometimes highlight the bits that aren't quite right. So there you have 10 really useful drawing tips. It doesn't have to be for cars, for drawing anything from life. I don't use every single one of them in every sketch I do, but they're definitely things that are worth having in the back of your mind, so that when you're doing that early construction drawing, you don't get too far astray. You can spot where mistakes are happening, and your drawings will have a bit more volume, a bit more three-dimensional feel too, I think, once you can master them. Hope you found that fun and interesting, and hope you're having a good week, and I'll see you for another one soon.